The first thing here that's really important is the word supplementary. So hopefully you've got down that supplementary equals 180. You have to know that. So the first thing we have to do is we have to use a protractor to draw a pair of supplementary angles that share a common side. Well, since supplementary angles make 180, that means they make a straight angle. So I'm just going to use my straight edge to draw, and then I'm going to turn this into two angles. So notice I've got two angles now that make 180 degrees. Now this says measure each angle. So I'm going to put my vertex right on the middle here, line it up with 0. Looks like I did 45 degrees and then 135 degrees. 45 degrees, 135. Yours might be different, but all that matters is that they add up to be 180. Now it says use a protractor to draw supplementary angles that do not share a common side. So notice here they're sharing this ray. We don't want them to share a ray this time. Okay, well we can do that. Let's draw our first angle. I'm going to make mine 40 degrees. So here's 40 degrees. Now the supplement to that is 140 degrees. So I'm going to draw this, put my vertex right at the 0 here, 140. Now notice they're really close to each other, but they're not sharing a vertex or a side. If I put them together, they'd make 180. But they're not sharing. Up here they're sharing, down here they're not sharing. Calculate the measure of an angle that's supplementary to KJL. Well, supplementary means they add to be 180. So if I already have 22 degrees, that means I need 158 more degrees. That would be the supplement. Complementary, here's your next vocabulary. Complementary angles make 90 degrees. So the way I remember that is you get a complement if you're right. Supplementary straight, you get a complement if you're right. That's how I remember the difference between them. So draw a pair of complementary angles. So what I'm going to do is they have to make 90. So I'm going to draw this end right here. And then I'm going to put a tick mark up here at 90. Because they have to make 90. A box here, and then I can just put it anywhere. It doesn't, two angles that make 90. There we go. And it says also to measure, so I'm going to measure. Looks like I made mine 60 degrees and 30 degrees. Yours can be anything as long as it adds up to 90 degrees. Now we're going to draw complementary angles that don't share a common side. Okay? Well, let's see. Let's draw in one side. I'm going to do a 40-degree angle and a 50-degree angle. Those are just my choices. Here's 40 degrees. I'm going to draw my 50 degrees over here. Notice they are not sharing a side. They're not touching in any way. But these are still complementary because they add to be 90. They do not have to share a side. They're still complementary. All right, 62 degrees, I want complementary to that, so I need to get to 90. I already have 62. That means I need 28 more degrees. Determine the measure of each angle. Show your work and explain. Two angles are congruent and supplementary. So congruent means equal. This means 180. So I've got two angles that added together equal 180. Well, if they're congruent, this one is x, this one also is x. So 2x equals 180. Divide by 2, x equals 90 degrees. So my angles are 90 and 90. They're both congruent and they're supplementary. How about two angles that are congruent and complementary? So two angles that add together equal 90, and they're the same. They're equal, so I can call them x and x. So 2x equals 90, x equals 45. So my angles here were 90 degrees and 90 degrees. The angles here are 45 and 45. And I want to explain my reasoning. My reasoning for this is that the angles have to be equal. They're congruent to each other, and they have to sum to 180. That's my reasoning. That's what supplementary means. So here, the angles are congruent, but this time, they have to sum to 90. That's my reasoning on that equation. What about the complement of an angle is twice the measure? Okay, so once again, I've got angles. Complement means adding to 90. Then I've got some angle, and then I've got twice the measure of that angle. So that's going to be 2x. Now you may have done a lot of these in your head, but I'm showing you the algebra that goes with it. So I've got 3x equals 90, x equals 30. So what are my two angles? Well, one of my angles is just x, and my other angle is 2x, so 2 times 30, which is 60. Let's see, does that make sense? Is one twice the other? Yep. And are they complementary? Yes, they make 90. So let's see, how am I going to explain this? Maybe I'll say they have to sum to 90 degrees, and then one is double, which is why I have x and I have 2x. That's my explanation. And maybe you figure this out without doing all the math, but I want you to see the algebra. Now we've got supplement, and if an angle is half the measure of the angle. So I've got two angles again that are making 180. And I've got x is one angle, and the other angle is half of that. So half of x. So I put this together, I've got 1.5x equals 180. Divide both sides by 1.5. And I get, okay, if we need to, we can use our calculator. So we have 180 divided by 1.5 is 120 degrees. So one of the angles is 120 degrees. The other is half of that. Half of 120 is 60. And my reasoning would be, well, they have to sum to 180. That's what supplement means. And one is half the other. That's why I used half right there. Determine the angle measure in each diagram. Well, let's look at what I've got. I see here that these two angles together are making 90 degrees. I see they're complementary. So these two added together equal 90. That's my equation. X minus 14 plus 2x plus 20. So these two angles together equal 90. Simplify this as 3x plus 6. Right, I just put my like terms together. Here are my like terms. Here are my like terms. Subtract 6 from both sides. 3x equals 84. Divide both sides by 3. I get x equals, let's see, it goes into 2 times, with 2 left over. I'm going to say that's 28. I'm going to check just to make sure. 28. So now let's plug that. Oh, notice it says determine the angle measure. So not just find x, but figure out what this angle is and what this angle is. So I need to plug x back in. I'm going to plug 28 right here and 28 right here. So 2 times 28 plus 20. This angle is 76 degrees. This angle over here is 28 minus 14, which is 14 degrees. Those are my two answers. Does that make sense? Do those add to be 90? Yeah, those add to be 90. Down here, notice these two angles are making a straight line. So I want to add them together to make 180. So x minus 30 plus 3x plus 10, these two angles are making a line. Together means add, they're making 180. Let's combine my like terms. These are like. Add 20 to both sides. Divide by 4. I get x equals 50. Now I need to go plug that back in. 50 minus 30 is 20 degrees. 3 times 50 is 150. 150 plus 10 is 160. Do these answers make sense? 20 degrees and 160 degrees. Yeah, they make 180. So that makes perfect sense.